We're ready. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. You guys like my new hat from Susanna? I love it. It's keeping me warm, and it says vegan. So we're going to have a fabulous demonstration from one of my favorite plant-based chefs in a few minutes. Her name is Chef Julia, and she is part of the Ultimate Vegan Health and Weight Loss Bundle, and she has a brand new ebook called Plant-Based Japanese. And so she's going to be making Japanese greens from her new ebook. If you'd like to get the bundle from her, you just look below what you're looking at, the screen, and there is what's called the show notes. I'll also put it in the chat if you're watching live. Please welcome Chef Julia to the show. Everybody's been so excited about your book when they ask them, what do they like about the bundle? Like other contributors are saying, oh, Japanese, I love it.
I was really surprised to hear that. So many people reached out to me to ask me to go live with them. And they said that when they clicked open my ebook, I have it printed out, but when they clicked open the ebook, I have this huge story about my mother and father. And so they read that and they said, oh, I love your story and I love your mom's picture. And so then they wanted to see my recipes. So it's worked out really well. I'm really happy with it and glad that I finally put all those recipes together. And because most of them were just kind of, you know, how you write recipes on little scratch pieces of paper and you know them in your head, but you don't really ever write them down because they're things you make all the time. So it's kind of like that. So I'm glad I finally had to force myself to put them all together in a compilation.
Well, that's fabulous. Now, Japanese greens, how is that different from greens or American greens?
Well, glad you asked. So Japanese greens, basically they're your typical grocery store greens. I like to grow greens, but the weather here has been terrible. And so I think my green plants died, but greens are wonderful because, you know, we're supposed to be eating greens. And these are the kind you can get at the grocery store, super greens and, you know, again, organic ones. And these come in 1 pound tubs. Used to be before COVID, you could get greens in the bulk section and you could just put them in your own container. But ever since COVID, they don't really have that anymore. So now you just have to kind of buy the greens in the container. And you can recycle the container, maybe use it for planting stuff, you know, like planting seeds or something. But, you know, for now, that's how I get my greens. And oops, I've got my sesame seeds cooking too. I can smell them. So I have to be careful not to overdo them because they burn very easily. So anyway, Japanese greens are basically blanched greens with some seasonings on them. So what I'm going to do to begin with, and I'm going to set my sesame seeds over to the side. I've got a pot of water. Can you kind of angle the camera a little bit over here, Steve? There we go. So I've got my pot of boiling water, and I'm going to blanch my greens by putting them in the boiling water for just 30 seconds. So Steve is going to, as soon as I get them all in here, he's going to time 30 seconds for me. My husband's helping me today. He helps me with my Zoom classes all the time. He's very helpful.
That's nice.
And then I'm going to stir them around. And in 30 seconds, I'm going to take them out and put them in ice water. So I kind of mix them around. I have my spider tool. It's just kind of a handy tool, 30 seconds. And I've got my ice water ready. It's waiting for me. But it's still a big bowl with some water and ice cubes. And the reason for that is because after 30 seconds, we want to take the greens out and stop their cooking. And they don't have to get cold necessarily, but the ice water stops them from cooking anymore, and it maintains the bright green color. And to me, they taste better when they're not cooked too much. Now, I know with Dr. Esselstyn in his greens recipes, he'll always say, blanch the greens for a minute or longer. And you know, his way of doing it is to cook the greens a lot longer, but the Japanese way is kind of a short cooking period. There was a yellow one in there. Okay, so 30 seconds is up, and then I just use my tool and I take them out of the water and put them in take them out of the hot water and put them in the ice water. And that's just long enough, like I said, to cook them. They're softer, but they're not dark green. They're still kind of a bright green. Thank you, Steve. And I think they taste best at this stage. So then I don't want to leave them in the ice water too long. I basically just want them to get, you know, a little cold water on them. and they'll melt the ice cubes pretty fast. But as soon as I see that they're cooled throughout, then I just dump them in a colander. I'll put it right here so you can see. And yeah, there's still some ice cubes that are unmelted in here, but that's okay. The main thing is I want to get them out of the water. I don't want them to sit in the water and just get soggy. So they're good, and I'll just dump this water out. And then, I'm going to let these drain a little bit while I make my gomaisu, the sauce that goes on it. And that's kind of a key ingredient why they're Japanese greens, because they're going to have some unique flavorings to them that you wouldn't find in just your regular greens. So I've cooked the greens, and I'm not cooking them to death. But then the next step is I'm going to grind them up. And I'm doing that in this little special bowl. It's called suribachi, but that's the Japanese name. And it's really a grooved bowl. It's got a lot of grooves on it, and that helps grind up the sesame seeds. So I roasted the sesame seeds just briefly, and they're already roasted. They're called roasted sesame seeds when you buy them at the Asian store or wherever. And then you toast them in a skillet, and that kind of just makes them, the fragrance of the toasted sesame seeds just kind of makes it come out. And then, it makes them have this really good fragrance, and it kind of improves the taste of it too, I think. So I'm just going to keep grinding these until I can see that a lot of them have been kind of, turned into a little bit of a less whole form. They don't have to, you don't want to turn this into a powder. You're just trying to crush up some of the sesame seeds. And somebody asked me recently, they asked me if it was not healthy to toast seeds, because they had heard Dr. Greger or somebody say that you shouldn't toast your nuts, you shouldn't roast nuts anymore. And so I did a little research, and I found out that with sesame seeds, it's beneficial to toast them or roast them, because that helps make them more available to you, the nutrients more available to you. And the actual information, I wrote it down. It was something I knew I'd never remember. It reduces the amount of oxalates and phytates that interfere with nutrient absorption. That's the technical stuff. I never remember that. So that's why it's not bad to toast or roast your sesame seeds. It's not going to hurt anything. So I've got them kind of ground up, and then I can add some things to them. So the typical thing to add is some kind of sweetness and some kind of salt. I know some of you are not salt users, so you don't have to put salt in if you don't want to, but I do put a little salt in mine. I put a half a teaspoon of salt. And there are lots of salt substitutes out now. In fact, I heard about some of these from Chef AJ. Like there's this one, dehydrated salicornia, and it's made from it's made from
sea asparagus.
Sea asparagus. Yeah, that was from Chef AJ. And so I bought a bag of that. And so that, and I think there was one that you talk about, Chef AJ, called Salacious.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Yeah.
And I have not ordered that yet, but I want to order that because I think that I might like that one. But this is a good one. And then I did put kosher salt, and I put a teaspoon and a half of date sugar. Instead of, in the original recipe, it calls for like just regular sugar, but I just use date stuff anymore. So it's got the little sweetness from the dates. It's got a little salt. You could use a salt substitute, or the salacious, or what is that stuff called?
Benson Stable, Tasty, Dylan Holmes. So many options nowadays,
Right. But really, you're after this kind of nice ground up sesame seeds, but some are still whole. I'm kind of pressing together the date. The date sugar tends to sometimes clump up, but that's exactly what you want. And I wish you could smell it, because it smells wonderful. It just, the smell of the sesame seeds roasted is just wonderful. So I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to finish up our greens. So remember, I had the greens, I blanched them for 30 seconds, put them in ice water. Well, now the next step is I take a Ziploc bag, I know that sounds weird. Turn it inside out. And then I scoop up all the greens and put them inside this bag. You'll see why. Then once I have them in my bag, then I turn the bag right side out. So they're all in the bag. Very easy. And I've got the drained juices from the greens in this bag because I know there are people like Chef AJ that'll drink the juices from the greens.
It's delicious, actually.
Why we don't want to have to get rid of it. So we'll just save this part because I'm going to squeeze the liquid out of the greens. Why am I doing that? Well, that's the Japanese way. So when I was growing up, I'd watch my mother make these Japanese greens, and she used spinach. That was the main thing that she had access to. And she would take her spinach, blanch it just like I did, and she would just use her hands. And I would watch her, and she would just be squeezing the spinach and squeeze it until it was dry. And I would ask her, I'd say, Mother, why are you squeezing the spinach? And she said, she would just say, oh, Japanese style. And then she would do what I'm going to do with mine. So that's what makes them Japanese, is there's a technique to this. So you just keep doing it until there's no more liquid. And I'll even press on them. I'll press on them on the kitchen sink to get all the water out. And then I will.
Julia, what did your mother do with the liquid?
She threw it away.
Ah.
She wasn't as evolved then. Okay, so look at all this liquid. So you can just take all this liquid and drink it. It's just vegetable juice and it tastes good. So, don't throw it away. Use it as a broth. You can use it for something else, like use it as a vegetable broth. But what
I heard you can even use it to water plants and they love it because of the nutrients, as long as you cool it first.
Yeah, well, it's cold because it was in ice water.
Oh,
so, think about that huge bowl. Remember, I had this bowl that was full of greens. It was like, a mountain of greens. Well, after cooking it, it's this much. So when Dr. Esselstyn says eat 6 servings of greens a day and people get overwhelmed by it, if you think about it, if you cook your greens, they really don't amount to a lot of food. So what I do after I've cooked them is I cut them into smaller pieces so it's easier to eat them because they're kind of big pieces. And I just kind of roughly chop them up a little bit. And then I put them in my bowl. Now, for my daily greens, I eat these every day for breakfast. So I like savory foods for breakfast. Just
good for you.
So I don't make all of them at one time for breakfast. I'll just take half a cup of greens, which is about the amount I eat for breakfast. And I'll put the dressing on that half a cup. And then I'll put the rest of the greens in that Ziploc bag and keep them in my fridge and eat them again later in the day for a snack. And a lot of times I don't put all the Japanese seasonings on my greens every time I eat them, but I put the seasonings on there in the mornings. But a lot of times I'll just have these cooked greens at all times. I'll cook up 2 of these boxes at one time. So I don't just cook half of the box. I'm only doing it because it's easier for a presentation. But normally I cook 2 pounds of greens at a time and have 2 bags of those greens. And then throughout the next about 4 days, every time I eat a meal, I take half a cup of those greens and put them in my meal somewhere, like on a potato, in a soup, or somewhere on my plate. You may not see them all the time, but they're always there. Okay, so then the 3 ingredients I dress the greens with, besides the gomaiso, the sesame seeds, in Japan, they use goma paste, which is, it's goma is the name for sesame seeds, but I had some goma paste that I had bought from Amazon. This little jar cost $40. I got it a while back, and golden sesame paste apparently is very rare and expensive. So I bought that, and I was looking at it one day thinking, hey, you know what? This reminds me exactly of tahini. Well, Mighty Sesame tahini is a lot cheaper, and I use it for a lot of stuff. So, and it's very easy to use. It flows well. So I thought I'm going to, try some little goma in the form of Mighty Sesame tahini and put like a half a tablespoon, a teaspoon and a half in my greens, and see if that makes them taste better. Because what I had been doing is just putting soy sauce and ume plum vinegar before. And then when I developed this recipe, I thought I'm going to make them even more Japanese. I'm going to add sesame flavor to them. So then I add my soy sauce and I just eyeball it, but it's probably like a half of a tablespoon of soy sauce, not too much, low sodium. And then ume plum vinegar. In Japanese cooking, umeboshi, they're kind of a preserved sour plum, a small plum. They're used in a lot of Japanese ingredients, and a lot of people just eat the plum, but they have a really great taste, but it's kind of salty. So just a few drops is all you need. Don't use too much, but it does impart this really, really good flavor. Just a little bit goes a long way. And then I just use my hands because, you know, that's just the way I do it, and massage the ingredients into the greens. Make sure that tahini gets throughout everything and it doesn't get, you know, stuck in one clump. So that's why I kind of move it around. You could use tongs or, you know, gloves or whatever, but you know, this is the only person in this house that's eating this is me. Steve does not like these kind of greens. He'll eat different things, but for some reason, he's not a big Japanese greens fan. He's missing out, but that's okay. It's more for me. I would gladly make him for him if he would eat them though. Okay. And then I don't put the sesame, well, I'll put some on now, and then I'll put some more on when I serve it. So then I can take my gomaiso, which is the roasted sesame seeds with the date, sugar, and a little bit of salt or salt substitute. And then you put it on top of the greens. And then how I serve it for myself is I have a bunch of different options, like depending on how much I'm going to eat. You know, if I'm really hungry, I'll put this pretty bowl here and I'll put a nice amount in this bowl. So that's how I'll serve it today. But sometimes I'll use a small bowl, like as a condiment. If I'm having a Japanese meal, then I'll take one of these little Japanese plates and I'll put some in there. But for today, I'll just put it in this bowl. And there you go. That is my famous Japanese greens. And people ask me about this because I post my food every day, what I eat every day on my Chef Julia support group on Facebook. And I have about, I think it's up to like 6,300 followers on there, members of the group. And what I do is I try to encourage everybody to eat the plant-based, the daily dozen from How Not to Die. And so in order to try to motivate people and help them and encourage them, I post what I eat every day. And I've been doing this for it'll be 3 years in May that I've been doing this, which, you know, you'd think that I would be getting old after a while and I wouldn't want to do it anymore, but I kind of like to do it because there's some kind of accountability to that people, I think my head's cut off a little, that people will, you know, helps them kind of visualize what I eat. And they'll see my plate of greens, they'll see my smoothie, they'll see my big salads, and they'll see all these vegetables and fruits. And, you know, then they'll say, I could do this. I could do this. I see what you're eating and I could do this. And so then they start following my 21-day challenge and they do it. And you know, it's fine. So I'm going to keep doing that. So if anybody watching wants a free way to, you know, get someone to help them get on board with eating plant-based, no oil, lots of really good healthy food according to the Daily Dozen by Dr. Michael Greger, you're welcome to sign up for my Chef Julia support group. And I'm happy to look at what you eat. You can post pictures of your own food every day too, which a lot of people have been doing lately. And I really do value and appreciate their participation, because then I can see, recently a woman posted her day of food and I said, oh my goodness, your day of food looks like it's at my house. And she laughed and she said, that's because I love your recipes. And I was really tickled by that, because it was obvious that she was cooking my food, but you don't have to cook my food to do it. You can cook any food.
Okay. Lydia says she missed the beginning. What kind of greens did you use?
Okay, these are called super greens, and the grocery store that I get them from is called Central Market. It's like H-E-B in Texas, and they are baby spinach, fresh mizuna, baby chard, and baby kale. And I love these greens because they're not bitter and they don't have arugula. So something about
you don't like arugula?
Well, not in the cooked greens.
Oh,
You know, when you cook them, arugula doesn't have as good of a taste. They taste better raw. So I like this type of baby super greens has a really good flavor. But you can use anything. You can use kale. You could use there are a lot of other brands out there, that Organic Girl, and any grocery store nowadays has some kind of thing of greens. That Costco has, I think they call theirs
Costco has power greens.
Power greens. Yeah, I used to get theirs.
Those are great. I don't know if you know the answer to this from Cindy. How would you describe the difference between plum sauce and plum balsamic, if you know?
Oh, well, ume plum vinegar is just made from ume plums, the dark purple fermented plums, and that's the only ingredient. Balsamic with ume has a combination of balsamic vinegar and this. So they're two totally different things. Similar, probably has a little bit of that ume taste, sour plum taste, but it has a balsamic vinegar taste as well.
I'm curious, when you post your food, is it similar from day to day, or are you a big wide variety eater?
My food is always kind of different, AJ. Like breakfast is the same usually, though. Breakfast is a smoothie because, I have to get in all this turmeric and ginger and amla powder and, all these different things. I put chia seeds, flax seeds, whatever. So my smoothie is berries, bananas, and whatever. But, and my greens, I always have the greens, but I have different things for the rest of my breakfast. Some days I'll have steel cut oats, cooked oats. Sometimes I'll have a breakfast oatmeal cookie. Sometimes I'll have, like I showed you the other day, we did Instagram, and I had like tofu scramble and brown rice. So I love, like the Mrs. Esselstyn's steel cut oats, where she makes like a savory steel cut oats. I have her original recipe and I'll have my version of it now, but I like those kind of savory steel cut oats and just anything. So I changed that part up. And then I make a lot of different soups, salads, entrees, because I teach cooking classes. So I'm always cooking new recipes all the time, testing things. And so I have a big variety of food in my day, more than probably the average person, just because, I do a lot of cooking for my YouTube channel and, cooking classes.
I love that you say you eat savory breakfast, because the people I've worked with that are sugar addicts and food addicts, I find that that's something, if they change to that and vegetables for breakfast, it really helps. And I'm curious, is it because you're Japanese? Because when I worked in Japan as a comedian, I was at a hotel, and it wasn't because I was vegan. All our breakfasts in Japan were savory. There was no sweet breakfast in Japan. There was miso soup with vegetables, there was salad, there was rice. And this was in 1994.
Right. Well, in my ebook, Plant-Based Japanese, one of the last recipes is a Japanese breakfast. And the Japanese breakfast has brown rice, miso soup, tofu, cucumbers, my greens, natto, which I don't like, but a lot of people like it. It's like fermented soybeans. But yeah, in Japan, the traditional breakfast was to have fish, rice, and miso soup and vegetables. And now it's been westernized. So a lot of the Japanese eat toast and they eat donuts and they eat unhealthy stuff. And they're getting a lot more unhealthy because they're eating the Western diet more. But the traditional diet was not like that.
I think this flour, sugar, croissant, donut breakfast, I think that's largely an American thing.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah. Have you been to Japan? Because I have.
Yes, I lived there for 4 years.
What part?
I was living in near Tokyo, as I was there stationed in the Air Force when I was really young, from age 20 to about 25. And I was stationed there in the Air Force. And then I went to college at the University of Maryland for 4 years on a military base near Tokyo. And, it was great. And I've been back twice, took my oldest daughter back there when she graduated from college. And then I went back with Steve a few years ago. So I've been back. That's the last time I was back, in 2010, but I would love to go again.
It's a long flight, isn't it?
It is.
So let's see if there's any other questions. You know what I wanted to ask you? You do these retreats, and I've seen you post photos of them. They look fabulous. You want to talk about them a little?
Sure. Yeah. I just started back having live classes, and that's the one thing I'm doing. It's an 8-hour retreat. I've had 2 so far. I'm sold out for the one in March. So people have come. It honors me so much to know that people fly in from all over the country, as far away as, I think I have someone coming from Rhode Island next time, but a lot of people have been coming from, of all places, Chicago. And they fly in, they stay at a hotel, they come to my house first thing in the morning, like 9 o'clock. They're here until 5, and I have a big kitchen classroom out here. And then I have another kitchen in the rest of my house and a bunch of different dining areas. And so what we do is, I talk to them about how they can take a few core recipes and turn them into multiple recipes. So they don't have to cook from a cookbook all the time. They don't have to always be thinking of something to cook. That I really want to teach people how you can take a few simple things, turn them into many other things, and, just kind of learn to have a repertoire of plant-based dishes that you really like. So I have them sample a lot of food. I make them a huge buffet of all kinds of breakfast food, savory, and some of my banana bread and pumpkin bread and greens. And my son is here making tea and coffee. And, we just have a great time. It's fun. And the maximum capacity is 12 people. So it's very small and intimate. So everybody can get personalized attention about their specific needs and challenges and, things that they want to accomplish. So that's it. I have them about 4 times a year. There's one in June and another one in October. And both of those still have a few openings left. And they're on my website. Anybody can go to my website, click on the retreat, sign up, and then you're all set.
So those are one-day retreats?
Yes, 8 hours, just one day.
Wow, they sound fabulous.
Where
are you doing them? You live in Texas, right?
Yes, I live in Azle, Texas, which is near Fort Worth, which is not far from the airport. What is it, Steve? Less than an hour.
What, 45 minutes?
45 minutes to DFW Airport.
Well, that sure sounds fun.
One woman came from Chicago and she had an Uber bring her to my house. She left Chicago late at night, got here, or early in the morning, got here for the class by Uber. At the end of the class, she took an Uber back to the airport and flew back to Chicago the same day.
That's some dedication to be able to do that all in one day like that.
She was pretty, to me, young. Later, I found out she was in her 40s, but I thought she was a lot younger than that. But wow. I said, man, you got the energy. I don't think I could function if I had to do that. But
so do they get to make any of the food themselves?
Oh, yes. I divide people up into 4 groups. And each group of 3 is assigned a core recipe, I call it. So let's say their core recipe was chili. Then that group of 3 makes their chili and cornbread and toppings and different things. And the other people are making theirs. And they're all working. Like I said, I have 2 kitchens and a lot of workspaces. And then when everybody's done, we have lunch together. And then everyone, tries all the different dishes to see what they like. And then I do a little demonstration after lunch about how to take each of those recipes to make other things with it. So like take the chili, make the chili, and then you can use it for topping for baked potatoes, or you could use it to top a bowl with a grain, or you could use it for, add more liquid to it and eat it like a soup or whatever, just like take this one dish and turn it into a lot of different dishes. So you don't have to always be thinking about what am I going to cook, which in coaching people seems like the biggest issue that they would tell me all the time. They would have every class. I have 50 classes on Zoom on my website, and I have people that have taken every class I've ever done. And they'll still tell me, when I was coaching them, they would say, I just don't know what to cook. And I would think, well, you have like thousands of recipes. But that wasn't the problem. It's not a recipe. It's in your mind that you have to just have this built-in sense of, like you, Chef AJ, you're going to have a sweet potato and broccoli. You don't have to, wake up in the morning and think, what am I going to eat today? Because you already know what you're going to eat. Well, that's what I'm trying to teach people is know what you're going to be eating every day and have some memorized recipes that you're comfortable with so that you don't have to constantly be worrying about this issue.
Yep. Kelly says, I'm currently looking at the Chef Julia cookbook in the bundle. I can't wait to make some of these recipes. And Dahlia wants to know, what are your favorite smoothies to make? And do you use soy milk? And she says she has added arugula to hers as well as kale.
Huh. Well, I don't put greens in my smoothie because I eat my greens. I don't really like the way they taste in the smoothie. Mainly my smoothies always have a half a cup of organic blueberries, a half of a banana, a cup of soy milk, but you can use any plant milk. And then I follow Dr. Greger's instructions about have a certain amount of turmeric, ginger, black pepper, and then I add chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds. And then I also add amla powder, matcha powder, and a couple other things, goji berries, and that's it. So, and then I add a date, one date. I get dates every few months from the date people in California, and I have like a freezer full of dates. And so every morning I get one date out of the freezer, cut it open, get the pit out, throw it in my smoothie. So my smoothie's not very big. So it's not like a giant meal. It's only made with 1 cup of plant milk and a small amount of fruit because I don't want to fill up on the smoothie. The smoothie to me is a vehicle for getting in all those other things, all those seeds and spices, because I'm not the kind of person that likes to sprinkle all that stuff on my oatmeal. To me, I can't tolerate that, but I can tolerate it if it's in that blueberry banana smoothie mixture. So that's why I have the smoothies, just to get all the other stuff in.
It's just a vehicle for nutrient delivery, huh?
But it's not very big. It's not a huge smoothie.
What kind of date do you like? Have you ever tried my favorite date, BAHRI, Bari?
You know, I have some of those. I have the date people sent me a variety pack, and I recognize that name because they're all labeled, and
Yep.
I take out a different pack and use it all the way through. And I have had that one, and it was really good.
Yep.
I love them all, but you know, I love
like craft
medjool.
caramels. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's see. Well, this is great. So have you had a chance to check out the bundle and see if there's anything you like other than your own wonderful book?
Of course, Chef AJ. I've been doing demos all over the place of other people's food. And in fact, I actually made a date caramel. And this was from Lauren, I can't think of her, Burnick.
Lauren Burnick from Well Elephant?
Yeah. And this was it's a date caramel, and it's just dates and some water and a few other real simple ingredients, but it made this delicious date caramel that I plan to use on my oatmeal. And then she's got 2 really good ebooks. And then this morning I did a Facebook Live where I made this hot fudge cake, and this was from PBNSG's cookbook.
Ooh.
And it's just a fudge cake, and it's really simple because it doesn't have any nut butters or anything in it. It's just applesauce, cocoa powder, some kind of flour. And it's pretty good, and it holds up really well. I also made some other things. I made, Tim Kaufman from Fat Man's Favorites, Fat Man Rants.
Yeah.
I had made some brown rice yesterday, and I was looking for a rice pudding recipe. So I asked on our bundle group, and he said, "Oh, there's one in my book." So I looked up his. So I made his rice pudding this morning on Facebook Live, and it doesn't look that great now because it's kind of congealed a little bit, but I know it'll reheat well. It was absolutely delicious. It has almond milk, raisins, and some cinnamon. And then what I did when I served it is I put fresh blueberries on top of it and a little more almond milk. And I put like 2 or 3 walnuts on top of it. And it was just great. But I've been making my rice.
How do you have the wherewithal to eat 2 or 3 walnuts? I cannot do that.
I've been able to, I tell the people, that follow me, I say, well, if you can eat 1 or 2 nuts or a little handful of chocolate chips, and that doesn't, you don't binge on that food, it's okay to keep it around, because I'm able to do that. I've been able to do it for 3 years. but not everyone does. So it just
I
depends
just wonder
on.
if there's a personality difference that Dr. Lyle could tell us why some of us can and some of us can't. I admire people that can do things I can't, like moderate nuts and eat raw all the time. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I don't think I could eat raw.
Yeah. Do you have a secret for rice in general? Like when we go to this vegan restaurant, I think he's Tibetan. I'm not sure because he
Mhm.
used to be a monk. And it's like, it's the best rice I ever had. And he says, I don't do anything other than cook it in a big pot. Like, can you give me some rice secrets?
It's funny that you should ask Chef AJ, because I was just going to show you my beautiful new rice contraption here that I've been experimenting with. It's called a donabe. And I ordered it from a Japanese company, and it's made in Japan. The company was founded in the 1800s, and it has like an inner lid, a top lid, and it makes brown rice or white rice. I use both, but it makes the most amazing rice I've ever had. And this was my brown rice I made this morning. You can't really tell now. It's kind of cold. It's been in the fridge, but the rice is fluffy. Every kernel is separate, but it's still soft, but it's not overcooked. It's not undercooked. And it's pretty easy to make. So I've been studying up on using the donabe. I have a whole book over here that I had gotten recently, and I was studying up on donabe cooking, which is all using these kind of clay pots. This is one that my mother made for me years ago. And, you can make tofu or vegetables, cabbage soup, and you make it on the stove, but you have to have a gas or butane range. It can't be made on electric. And you serve it in that clay vessel. And, it's a cool way to eat. But yeah, that's a really good way to make rice. And the other way that I make brown rice that I'm always successful is the pasta method.
Oh, like where you kind of cook it in water, like, yeah, with the water, right?
And that's for brown rice. You throw your brown rice in a giant, 6-quart pot of water for 30 minutes or so, and then you taste it. And when it tastes the way you like it to taste, where it's got a little bit of al dente, it's not mushy, then you immediately drain it in a colander and put it back in the pot, put the lid on and let it steam for about 5 minutes. And then it's done. And then you have this fluffy, delicious brown rice. And so I teach everybody in my classes to make their brown rice, that way, pasta style, because a lot of people are turned off from brown rice.
Really?
They say that it's gummy and gooey and they don't like the texture of it. And it's a hard rice to make turn out well. If you use an Instant Pot, sometimes it has that kind of, I don't know. I don't like rice in the Instant Pot in general because
I just find it comes out better in a rice cooker for me than in an Instant Pot. Do you also enjoy white rice? White basmati is my favorite.
Yes, I love white Japanese rice. They have the most delicious short grain rice. And I posted a picture of my food with rice, Japanese rice, on Dr. Greger's How Not to Die group recently. And somebody said, "You're not supposed to eat white rice."
Oh, yeah. Well, yes,
and I said, "I'm part Japanese, so I'm always going to eat white rice."
Well,
that doesn't make any sense.
3 billion non-diabetic, non-overweight Asians on the planet that have eaten white rice throughout history. That's ridiculous. Here's a good question from Dahlia. How long is it safe to keep leftover cooked brown rice in the refrigerator?
Well, rice is one of those things. Don't keep it around too long because I'd say for me about 4 days. I don't keep anything past about 4 days in the refrigerator because I don't like the way it tastes after that. So what I do with my rice is really pretty much the second day is I divide it up I eat half-cup portions of rice. That's just what I do because my tendency is to overeat grains and not eat enough of the vegetables. So I try to portion out my grains throughout the day in half-cup sizes so I don't overeat grains and don't eat the rest of the other food. So I'll put it in half-cup portions, and then I'll put those inside something else, another container in the freezer, maybe a little Ziploc bag, or it could be a little container, but I'll keep them in separate containers. And that way, when I need a serving of rice, I just get it out of the freezer.
That makes sense. What do you have in that bowl
This is my sweet potato miso soup I made. I made this yesterday on Facebook Live in the morning when I was doing one of my videos, and it's in my Japanese ebook, but it's just called Winter Miso Soup. And you take your baked Japanese sweet potato And you can put it in with the miso and, dashi stock, which is made from seaweed. So even if you didn't like tofu, you don't have to use tofu. You could just make a miso soup with pieces of sweet potato and carrots and regular potatoes and onions, and make the most delicious Japanese miso soup and have it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And that's what this is left over. It needs a little bit more liquid in it because it kind of absorbs it. But I have seaweed, and sometimes I put corn in it, green beans, zucchini. Pretty much you can put any vegetable in your miso soup and make it just a hearty meal. And it has that really delicious flavor of the miso, which is also good for your health and for your gut. But yeah, that was another thing I made.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. I wish you every success with your new ebook. I'm sure you'll probably sell it after the bundle, so it makes sense for people to get it now with all the other, $6,500 worth of goods that are in there.
Yes, and they're like, I was watching a few minutes ago, Tammy Kramer's batch cooking thing. You did a video with her, and I was watching that thinking, well, just that one course is worth so much. So, there are so many courses on here. Fitness, and I was really impressed with the fitness courses, because a lot of my people will ask me about how do you do your weight training, and there are all these like weight training courses with illustrated ebooks, and there's everything how to organize your life with what Andrew Mellon, decrease clutter.
Yeah, decluttering. That sounds like a fun course. He's going to be coming in person, I think, next week to do a live with me.
Oh, great. But yeah, there's something for everyone in there, Chef AJ. It really, I think
I'm so proud of everyone's contribution, and it is a beautiful bundle, and people should get that for gifts and all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, thank you so much, Chef Julia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, my pleasure. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back at 10 a.m. tomorrow for McDougall Monday with Dr. John and Mary McDougall, and get the bundle.